We live in a world where our lives are for the most part digitized. Our communication via cell phones, social media amongst others, work, and with the popularity of the internet, doing business online. This has now been dubbed e-commerce, where normal transactions such as shopping, paying for utilities, and selling products is done online via a network. Finance Online's Data and Share Market Analysis 2020 shows that e-commerce is not only thriving in the business-to-customer sector, but sales are also scaling in the business-to-business sector. While the rest of the world has already caught on, the same cannot be said about e-commerce here in Botswana. With the rise in online crimes, which include fraud and phishing amongst others, Botswana is said to be afraid to use online platforms for doing business. Statistics show only 4.6% of the population are regular online shoppers, according to a survey by Statistics Botswana released in 2017. As we're in the age of digitization, how can these fears be abated? Looking at the benefits that come with using e-commerce platforms. Joining us this evening for this discussion is Kabelo Masupa, who is solution strategist at a local commercial bank. Kabelo, thank you so much for coming here on First Issues. Today we're talking about e-commerce. This is not necessarily a new, practice or way of doing business, but Botswana is still afraid. So how do you think that these fears can be abated so that Botswana can enjoy the benefits that come with e-commerce platforms?
We're addressing the fears around e-commerce is concerned. The starting point is always with education, educating the client, educating the customer as well on the protocols surrounding e-commerce. The critical thing is having testimonies from customers and clients that we have onboarded, testimonies from other customers that have actually used local e-commerce platforms. To cite a few, as FNB, we have within our e-commerce platforms the SIPA platform, the BRS online payment platform. So that speaks to the safety and the protocols that we deploy around the services we offer. Two, it's testament of the fact that e-commerce phenomena is not new in Botswana. It has been around for quite some time, and as FNB, we moved first. We saw the picture from the get-go, and we moved and built the capability accordingly. Of course, I think there's been major focus on e-commerce following the COVID-19 and the COVID protocols around social distancing. So that has sort of accelerated, I think, the questions where people want to know and understand more about e-commerce capability. The question also around how do we adopt and adapt to the COVID protocols of social distancing. So we have, I think, in the past year now, have had to deal with clients coming in to ask, and we've imparted the knowledge. We've also had customers also asking, how do we set it up for ourselves? And we've onboarded, importantly, more customers onto e-commerce platforms.
One of these fears is being defrauded online. So I guess the question now could be, how extensive are Botswana's e-commerce laws or regulations as far as, following up on these cases of fraud online and, protecting customers?
Well, I think the first thing to note is that as a bank, FNB is regulated by the Central Bank of Botswana. We have to be seen to be complying to the set parameters of operating. The same goes for the e-commerce offering. We, on an annual basis, are subjected to an audit to ensure that we comply. And the same sort of compliance we actually take to the customers that we have onboarded. This is to ensure that an e-commerce customer going into a platform that we have as FNB is protected. We periodically take our customers through that compliance process to make sure that the customers that ultimately come into into the platforms for purchasing purposes are protected. Another important one where investigation of transactions is concerned is that we have tools and mechanisms that show us if this is a suspicious transaction or if this is a fraudulent transaction. We will pick up that it's a fraudulent transaction and investigate. The important thing is that where a customer approaches us to say this transaction is illegitimate, we have mechanisms and processes to follow to investigate that suspicious transaction, and also within a reasonable amount of time feedback to our customer.
Gabelo, while your specific institution has managed to onboard a substantial amount of customers onto e-commerce platforms, it is not the case with every other institution that has these platforms, right? So how do you think that other organizations can, encourage customers to do what you've managed to do, which is to make people, be aware of these platforms and be confident and comfortable with using them?
Well, the critical starting point for every organization, really, whenever there's a new product introduction or a new way of doing things, is to take your customer along that journey. So, for instance, as FNB, we're a bank of firsts. You point to services like cell phone banking, services like online banking, not to digress from e-commerce. But what we have done is, nobody had not done it in the market, but we took our customers along that journey, educating to a level where they're comfortable enough and it's a part of everyday use. So we would say and encourage our clients in the very same manner to say, when you offer or introduce a new service, you need to ensure, importantly, that it's a journey. You do not expect instant conversion. But the critical thing is to stay very close to your customer, educate them on that journey. The questions and the insights will ultimately come from them. And it importantly is a partnership where we need to almost handhold your customers. So I would say to a company that's looking to go into e-commerce, to say education and partnering with your customer, your client on that journey is very critical.
So in closing, what do you think is the responsibility that clients or consumers or customers have in protecting themselves when using e-commerce platforms?
The customer must take responsibility for, I think, a number of checks insofar as the service providers that they're dealing with that are delivering the e-commerce platform. Well, in our context, it's the bank. You can place some reliance on a reputable bank like FNB being your service partner in the provision of e-commerce services, because behind the bank is the regulatory framework within which we operate in the Botswana context and indeed internationally. Our customers must ensure that they only transact online on platforms or websites that they are familiar with and those that they trust. Another important one is that they check their bank statements, and importantly, when in doubt, call your bank.